I'm Justine, and today I would like to share with you a very interesting book that I discovered over the course of the holiday season, The City We Became. So without further ado, here's the contents, and let's jump right in, shall we? Now, I would like to begin with a quick introduction of the author, the leading lady, Mrs. N.K. Jemisin. Calling her a formidable talent might be the understatement in this situation, considering the fact that she once finished 3 full-length sci-fi epics in her bedroom while also maintaining a job as a counseling psychologist. And that, in my opinion, is absolutely incredible. Also, I highly recommend her other works, such as the Broken Earth trilogy, because this conspiracy queen can definitely blow minds. Moving on to the actual meat of my presentation, where everything starts to get a bit more fun. What is this book about? Now, in Jemisin's universe, cities acquire a human-like soul once they reach a certain level of development, and that soul will then choose to manifest itself onto a random citizen avatar of its choice, thereby implying immediate chaos. Because think about it, every dimension in the multiverse, every city and every country on planet Earth, and that adds up to billions of these avatars. Crazy, huh? I would think of that energy as a love child between Neil Gaiman, H.P. Lovecraft, and Marvel Studios. Endlessly inventive, yet absolutely destructive. So one day, New York decides to come of age, and with it, she brings with her not 1, but 6 of these avatars. 1 prime avatar to represent New York as a whole, and 5 others to represent each of its unique, distinctive boroughs. Staten Island, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and last but not least, Queens. Unfortunately, our heroes are not safe in this setting, because lo and behold, the enemy lurks in a deep, dark corner. Enter our extra-dimensional mollusk adversary, or as I may conveniently call him, the enemy. The enemy plans to sort of derail New York's newfound soul through a series of supposed city renewal projects, and knowing the fact that this is a commercialized novel, our heroes band together to save New York once and for all. And they succeed in the end, despite the fact that they sort of get betrayed by one of their own. We'll talk about that later. The themes incorporated in this work include cities and gentrification. As I previously stated, the enemy uses renewal as an excuse to destroy New York as a whole. Community and diversity, where somewhere down chapter 5, Jemisin states that a city thrives by mutual inclusiveness between its people. And lastly, race and prejudice. Do you know why our Staten Island decided to betray her beloved comrades? Well, it wasn't because she was being selfish. Actually, the woman in white, a member of the adversary, coerced her to do so by using her racist family background. Staten Island's dad was a bigoted NYPD cop, and things just went south from then on. I would call this book Jemisin's roar against all the problems of contemporary New York City, but I'm open to other opinions. Feel free to talk to me about them after I finish my presentation. All in all, despite this book being slightly slow in terms of first half pacing and a bit stuffed to the gills with New Yorker inside humor, it's a great read and definitely worth your time. Thanks for listening and have a great day. Goodbye.
Have you ever wondered at what life will be if you become a 19-year-old teenager? Maybe you're suffering from schoolwork from university, or maybe you're having a new relationship. But no matter what you're doing at that time, you must start it to experience the world and to explore the world. But do you know that there is a generation of people that when they turn into 19, the world didn't greet them with such carefree life. Instead of that, the world kind of forced them to face the brutal of the war. The book that I would like to talk about today is All Quiet on the Western Front by Remark. So the story happens in World War World War I, and the main character Paul and his friends joined the military, and with all of the excitement and all of the patience. And the reason is that the teacher is kind of like encouraging them because of the atmosphere of the society at that time. And by the following of the war, they started to realize that the war is kind of like crucial and also brutal out of their expectation. And because of that, and by the following of the war, his friends started to dead one by one. And the friends started to dead one by one, and eventually in the last line of the novel, it was said that Paul, the main character, was dead just a month before the church. And it's kind of ironic because the message I sent it to the control center at that time says that it is all quiet on the Western Front. But actually there's people dying, like Paul died, but why is the message says that all quiet on the Western Front? I think this point is like the thing that author wants is to think furthermore about it, and also to think about what the author wants to convey to us. And speaking about the author, well, I think the author did a really brave thing, because in that kind of era and in that kind of government, the background is like you need a lot of courage to publish a book that the concept is against with the government. So the author, the remark is like he actually did participate and join the army in World War I. And after the following 10 years, he started to transform his experience into some ideas and put it into the novels and publish it. But because of that, some of the fascists started to like force him, and eventually they exiled him abroad, and he started to travel to America and places like that. And I need to say that this novel really inspired me a lot, and it's kind of cheesy to say that, but really remind me the cruelty of the world, of the war. And to be honest, I have no feeling of like the war between Ukraine and Russia in the past few months, and I feel like it is because we already learned a lot of things of war in our history class. But the difference is that in history class, teacher didn't teach us and taught us the brutal and the cruel aspect of the war. And after I read this novel, I found that the thing we learned in history class is just the tip of the iceberg. And like in this novel, the author really record everything in detail. Like they write about how your friends die in front of you, and like how the tank just smashed over a bunch of soldiers. I think this really freaks me out. And again, though it's really cheesy, but I feel like it really reminds me of we need to be choice of what we have and what like the people around us. And another thing that I learned is that critical thinking. This is what I didn't expect before I read this novel, and that is because there is a chapter that really impressed me, is that they gather around and talks about like why they joined the army. And some of them, they talks about like because their teacher, the principal, like encouraged them to join the army, and they describe to join the army and become a soldier just like being a hero. I feel so ridiculous at the time because like just because in my opinion, I feel like it is such crazy things to be participate in a war, but they just participate it just because people think that. And I feel like after I think furthermore, I feel like actually we are kind of in a similar condition with them, because in the era right now, people can just express any information wisely, like without even any cost. So I think it is really like it is really important to have the ability of critical thinking for us to tell what is right and what is wrong, and also which information are important for us and which are not. And by doing so, I feel like when I'm doing something, I feel like I can do it more efficiently, and also when I'm deciding something, I can also make it more accurate. And so this is all about the book, All Quiet on the Western Front. Thank you for listening.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Chen Jingwei, and today I'm gonna share a book I read before. And let's get started. Imagine that it is supposed to be a cozy Christmas day. We celebrate New Year. However, nobody could expect the coming of Cyberstone. Now let's explore the novel Cyberstone. And now you are the optimist man Michael and his pessimistic neighbor Chuck. The power goes off, and I guess it should just last for just a few minutes. However, the internet doesn't work. All I see, error, everything is error, and the viruses and snowstorm rage everywhere in America. I feel freeze to death as I forced myself to fit in this harsh environment. Gradually, we're gonna run out of food, and worse still, the water supply is turned off. In the darkness, there's a ray of light inside. We are head to the light. All I can see is another mess. What's happening? Who cares this? Aliens, Iran, or Russia, or Chinese government? Nobody knows that, and it's gonna be the third world war. Nobody knows it because every piece of information is unavailable. Now, if you wanna keep the adventure, I strongly recommend the book. And let's know something about the book. The book was published in 2013, and it was written by a Canadian best-selling author, Matthew Mather. And actually, his job is about technology industry. The book was considered a prophecy after a pandemic happening because it mentioned the outbreak of coronavirus. So its Chinese version was released in 2020. And there are always so many attractions of the book, such as the immersive feeling. I always feel myself as the character of the book. So the way I describe the plot is what I do when I read this book. And the scenes of disaster film sprung into my mind, maybe such as the movie The Day After Tomorrow. Yeah. And the most attractive is unexpected twist, which can lead me to the peak and make me fall to the bottom. And the last is critical thinking about technology, human nature, and even the tension between countries. I was astonished by the fact that many things are controlled by a few cyber systems, which means if the hackers and the viruses attack the system and lead to a serious damage, it means the world will stop working. What though? Maybe because of the heavy dependence on advanced technology. Instead of bullets, bombs, the critical weapons in the world maybe are viruses and hackers. And it wasn't until Russia and Ukraine war that I realized the world is disturbing. Our concern of Taiwan suffers again. We are in a rocking boat, and nobody is certain of whether it will overturn or not. Everything I know about the world is everything is unknown. That's the end. Thank you.
story called Number the Stars. This is one of the most impressive books I have read recently. First of all, I'm going to tell you the reason why I chose this book. When I was looking for a suitable book to read, this one caught my eyes. I've always been interested in history because it makes me think deeply about the society. Also, the terms used in the story are not too difficult, so teenagers could understand the context without any problems. Secondly, I'm going to introduce the author, Lois Lowry. She was born in 1937 in America, which meant she had experienced the World War II. Her writing genre is partly young adult fiction and partly science and historical fiction. Her book, Number the Stars, had won 2 prizes, the Newbery and the National Jewel Award. Moving on to the plot, the story took place in 1942 when Denmark was occupied by Germany. At that time, the Nazi was frantically searching and identifying Jewish people. The main character, Emery, was a 10-year-old child whose best friend is a Jewish. The author wanted to describe how brave Emery was when she tried her best to save her friend. Lastly, I want to share my thoughts with all of you. I think that the history of the World War II is really meaningful and worth knowing. The core background in the story is the Nazi and the Jewish people in Denmark. There is no doubt that the Nazis' racist treatment toward the Jewish people were not right. In my opinion, I think that because the author used a young, innocent child as a main character because it can present the innocence and the ruthlessness of the war. By reading this book, we could learn lots of things, and we need to think about those lessons which we learn from. The warmth and the bravery of the people were impressive. However, it was a little bit sad that their companions were caught and killed because they hid the Jewish people. But in the end, they believed strongly in their actions and were quite content. This is the most touching thing for me. Although war is something that sounds far from us, it's actually all around our life. When the Russia and Ukraine war started, people say that the war won't last long. However, it has been a year now. None of us can really understand how grief it caused to someone to lose their family members, friends, and others. And by reading this book, we need to think about those who are suffering around the globe and have a caring heart. Thank you for your listening.
Hello everyone, my name is Avery, and today I'm going to introduce a book called Hello Universe. My topic is You Are Beautiful. What message does the author want to introduce to us through Valencia and Carly's friendship? So before starting it, let me give you guys a quick summary of this book. So the main character, Virgil, was a shy boy. He liked the deaf girl, Valencia, but he didn't have the courage to tell her. One day, when he was going to his friend Carly's house, he bumped into a bully in his class, Chet. Chet threw Virgil's bag and his pet into the well. Virgil decided to jump in the well and save it, but he got stuck in there. Meanwhile, Valencia, in order to find more about herself, was going to meet Carly, a teenage psychic. When she heard that Virgil was gone, she decided to find him with Carly. During the search, they built a strong relationship by giving each other trust. Eventually, they found Virgil and became each other's friends. So I want to put my focus on the character Valencia. She is the third character that the author introduced to us, but I think she is the most mysterious character. And I'm very interested in the relationship between Carly and Valencia. So let's get started. So what message does the author want to introduce to us through Valencia and Carly's friendship? I think the author wants to introduce the theme "Be Who You Are" through Valencia and Carly's friendship. The story started with Carly introducing her choice to be solo because it's an easier choice. Being deaf, Valencia often felt that people have to go out of their way to treat her. Valencia observed the world quietly, but deep in her heart, she still wants friends. Later in the story, Valencia finally revealed that she was once hurt by her best friend, Roberta. Roberta even told her that she didn't want to play with her anymore just because it's too hard to talk with her normally. The reader can tell that Valencia was actually hurt by Roberta because she didn't think of making any new friends. Seeing Carly's ad in the supermarket, Valencia arranged an appointment. This can be taken as a sign that Valencia wanted to look for an answer. When Valencia and Carly first met, they immediately clicked. They saw a beauty in each other, and when to look for Virgil, they were willing to take a step back and listen to each other's opinion and advice. Virgil was actually saved by Valencia and Carly's cooperation. In their relationship, Valencia can finally be who she is and be loved the way she is, which is the theme that the author wants to introduce to us. Having a similar experience as Valencia, I can relate to her struggling and suffering. But fortunately, like her, I have found my best friend too. Valencia and Carly's friendship reminds me that there must be people who love the way I am, and I should be who I am. Thanks for listening.
Hello everyone, my name is Eileen, and the story I'm going to be sharing today is called The Little Prince. It is written and illustrated by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, a French writer and a pioneering aviator. The story sets in the 1940s in the Sahara Desert where the narrator's plane crashed. The story started with the Little Prince approaching the narrator after the narrator's crash and then requesting for a painting of a sheep. The Little Prince later on tells the narrator about his life back on V612, how he falls in love with a rose, but finds her conceit and demands intolerable and departs. The Little Prince later on visits several asteroids, 6 of them each with an adult reduced to a mere function, and has a bizarre career. On the 6th planet, he meets a geographer who recommended him to visit planet Earth, which is how he started his journey here on Earth. For the characters, the Little Prince is very curious and cautious. He lived every day the same back on V612 because he is afraid of making mistakes. The fox, who the Little Prince meets on Earth, is very wise, and he taught the Little Prince the meaning to tame and asked to be tamed by the Little Prince. The rose, who is the prince's lover, is vain, stubborn, and proud. She does not say what is on her heart and hides it deep. She does not say what is on her mind and hides it deep in her heart. The pilot, which is also the narrator, is an adult but has the heart of a child. For the lessons I picked up from this book is first about unspoken love. The rose said to the Little Prince, "Of course I love you. It is my fault that you have not known it all the while." This reminds me of how nowadays we rarely say I love you to the ones we love because we feel it unnecessary. But the story tells us that that may not be the case. And the second is about to stay foolish, stay hungry and stay foolish. The Little Prince said to the narrator, "The men where you live plant 5,000 roses in the same garden, and yet they do not find what they're looking for." and yet what they're looking for could be found in one single rose or in a little water. We easily get blinded by the magnificence we see and forget what it is we wanted in the beginning. So we should stay true to ourselves. And the third is the time wasted makes one special, which is also what the fox taught the little prince about Tame. The little prince said when he saw the garden full of roses, he said to them, "You are beautiful, but you are empty." We give meanings to the things we see. A rose may be simply a flower, or it may mean the whole world. The reason why I love this book so much is because there are a lot of things we can relate to our lives in this book. About friendship, about love, and about loneliness, and about growth. Last but not least, this is a quote I wish to give the little prince and every one of us. It is that it is impossible to live without failing at something, unless you live so cautionally that you might as well not have lived at all, in which case you failed by default. I want to tell, we shouldn't be afraid of trying, we shouldn't be afraid of failure, and we shouldn't let that stop us from trying. No matter if it comes to confessing your love to someone or just simply changing something in your everyday routine. And that would be the end of my presentation. Thank you, everyone.
Hello everyone, today I'm going to talk about the darkness and light that symbols in the novel Hollow Universe. And before talking about that, I'm going to introduce you to this novel. Hollow Universe is about a boy named Virgil and how his growth happened when he was stuck in a well, and his relationship with other characters, such as his grandma Lola. Lola is a Filipino immigrant, and she often tells Virgil stories that are folktales and myths that is from the Filipino culture or her personal experience. There are two stories that I think are the most important. The first one is Ruby, the girl who doesn't know her destiny. Ruby was a girl from Lola's village, and when all her sisters had their fortunes read, hers couldn't be seen. This left her wondering what her destiny was. And at the end of the story, she left to figure it out. The second one is Pa, who controls the darkness. Pa was one of the mountain creatures in Balatama, a thriving island. But the people there were very selfish. One day, they cut down the trees that belonged to Pa. This made him very angry. He grew bigger and bigger because of anger, and then he spread his wings that blotted out the sunlight. This blinded the villagers. Then he ate all the villagers as the result. For me, these two characters doesn't just mean two characters. They represent the brave and the coward sides of Virgil. In the well, Virgil really had the time to look into himself and have conversations with both of his sides. But unlike Ruby having conversations with Virgil, Pa never did. Ruby told Virgil the story of Pluto and the jungle dragon to let him know that physical strength doesn't equal to bravery. And the second thing she told him is she encouraged him to yell. And lastly, she called him Bayani, which meant hero. And this is a quote from the novel where I think why it's Ruby who talked to Virgil, not Pa. So, like what I have mentioned, Ruby left her village to find out what her destiny was. And here is where the author gave us the answer. So as you can see here, Virgil asked Ruby, why did she appear? And Ruby said she came here because her destiny is to help people in trouble. Unlike in the beginning, when Virgil could only focus on Pa, which is his fear when he first fell into the well. Through time, when Ruby started to having conversations with him, Ruby is getting stronger and stronger, which is like his bravery getting stronger and stronger in him. And when Ruby is with Virgil, having conversations with him, Virgil found out that Pa would disappear when Ruby is there. And then he would realize that Pa actually doesn't exist. And then I'm going to talk about what does Virgil's yell mean. The first one is bravery is more powerful than fear, because Ruby is the one who encouraged Virgil to yell. And in my opinion, Ruby represents bravery. And the second one is if he spoke up, his voice would be heard. Because in the novel, when Virgil yelled, his voice was heard by other characters. And lastly, my opinion. I think when Ruby encouraged Virgil to yell, it meant that Ruby was winning Pa. And it also equals to the brave side of Virgil winning the cowardly side of Virgil. And this is the biggest change that happened to Virgil in the novel. Thank you, everyone.
Hello everyone, my name is Amber and today I'm going to be talking about the book It Ends With Us. Have you ever experienced something as a bystander and audience first, and then you thought everything was so simple and easy, but then one day you became the victim of the story and then suddenly everything was so much more than you thought? Well, that is the story of Lily Bloom. So the story starts with a girl named Lily attending her father's funeral, but she wasn't grieving, rather feeling a sense of relief. And then the story goes on to reveal that her father was actually abusive and that he would often abuse her mother and she would witness it. So she was always frustrated by the fact that her mother sticked with her father even though she was suffering so much. So after her father died, she decided to move on from her past life and start a new life. But the past kept haunting her, either in different signs or people from her past keep coming back. So that forced her to go through her old diaries and really look into her past, which she is so desperately trying to desert and bury. And at last, the story reveals that Lily's current partner, Ryle, is actually abusive, and that she is now stuck in the same position as her mother was in. And she started understanding and having empathy towards her mother, and at last she made the change and break the abusive cycle. So let's talk a little about the author. So you may wonder why Colleen Hoover wrote this book. So she was actually a victim herself in a domestic abuse household. She grew up watching her father abuse her mother, but her mother, as a strong woman, shielded her from all of that. And this book is actually a dedication to her mom and also to help people raise awareness of domestic violence. So these are some things that are important that I picked up from the book. First, gender violence. Gender violence is the social differences between men and women that triggered injustice and later on developed into violence. So in the book, we can see it was Lily's father towards Lily's mother and Ryle towards Lily, which is always men towards women. Disclaimer, it wasn't always men towards women, but that is just the case of the story and what the society is mainly seeing. Next is trauma and coping mechanisms. So throughout the story, Lily has a very traumatic life by witnessing her father abuse her mother. And her way of managing these painful and challenging emotions is through writing diaries. And that is also how she seeks closure in the future, by going through her old diaries. And so that made her coping mechanisms expressive writing. And that is a huge part of the story. So last but not least, I'm going to be talking about my thoughts and conclusions. So what I really like about this book is that I think it isn't too dark or suffocating like some books that contains serious topics. So it was pretty easy for people to pick up and read, which means that the author could easily spread awareness of domestic violence, which I really like. And in conclusion, I think for a lot of things, there are many different sides, and as bystanders, we don't really know the full side of the story. And for us to judge is really unfair. So what I think is that we should have more empathy towards whether it is victims suffering from domestic violence or people in general suffering that we don't fully understand. And in general, just be kind and loving and make sure that they feel safe and have a safe environment. Okay, thank you everyone.
I'm Jenny, and today I'm going to talk about the book Hello Universe and how I think all relationships take time. The main topic I'm going to focus on today is the relationship between Virgil and his family members. This is a book about the sensitive and overthinking boy Virgil. He lacked self-confidence and couldn't express himself in front of his family. On his way to his friend's house, he was pushed down a well by the school bully. Trapped in the deep, dark well, he began to face himself and his inner voices. The author shows Virgil's personality and changes by discussing his relationship with the people around him. I would like to focus on his relationship with the people around him, like his mom and his grandma. When his mom introduced Virgil to Lola, who is Virgil's grandma, "This is Turtle," his mother said. It can be seen that his mother didn't quite understand him. She just called him by this nickname because Virgil was shy and wouldn't come out of his shell. But what they didn't know is that every time they said it, a piece of him broke. Because Virgil didn't get to share his real feelings until he experienced the major dilemma in the book, which is being trapped in the well. The time of being all alone in the dark gave him a chance to reflect on his past experiences and gave him courage to face his true needs. He could finally face himself and not be afraid to tell his needs out loud. I was glad for Virgil because he could be himself without worrying what others might think. Also, Lola plays an important role in the story. The author shows the relationship through the stories Lola told Virgil. In fact, her stories accompanied him during the most difficult time in his life and encouraged him to hang there. That was 6 years ago, and he knew he was still her favorite, even though she never said so again. There's no exaggeration to say that Lola changed Virgil's life and turned him from a coward to a hero. I felt fortunate for Virgil because a family member like a best friend and life teacher can really influence a person a lot. I see myself in Virgil's relationship with his mom, so I can relate to him. I used to think that my mom didn't quite understand me, so I can agree with my mom a lot. My mom is a serious person, so she usually scolded me directly when I made mistakes or misbehaved. But it didn't work at all because that would only bring me down. Once, I couldn't control my emotions anymore after my mom yelled at me again. I shouted out all my dissatisfactions with thousands of tears falling down my face. Though the atmosphere was awkward, luckily we successfully solved the problems and communicated with each other. To sum up, Virgil had different relationships with his family members. Lola offered him tender kindness and courage. Though his mom didn't quite understand him, she also taught him an important lesson of expressing himself. I think that a relationship is like an onion. We could only peel it off one layer at a time, and sometimes we weep. However, there are also surprises, so why don't we just open our hearts? Thanks for your concentration.
And congratulations that you finished much earlier than those who are still struggling outside, all right? So before I share my feedback, please give yourself a round of applause, all right? This is the second time that I came here to listen to students' presentation. I'm very glad that this year the task fulfillment is pretty high, so good job, okay, everyone. So I'm going to share some feedback according to the grading criteria. Okay, the first of all is the content. All right, the first one is I'm very happy to hear several interesting hooks in some of your presentation. For example, if you want to know the ending of the story, please read the story. Or have you ever thought about blah 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 blah? And in this book, you are going to find blah blah blah. Okay. This is, I would say, effective hooks that provoke our curiosity about the book, right? However, when it comes to the summary or the main plot and your personal reflection, some of you somehow mix them together. So you want to talk about this issue and you want to use the examples in the book but to us, if it mixed up, all right? So in the latter part of the presentation, it will be harder for us to follow the flow, okay? So don't mix them up, okay? And as for your delivery, most of you have great, excellent pronunciation. But this is a presentation. That means you have audience sitting down there. So it doesn't mean that being fluent doesn't mean that you have to speak really fast, okay? Instead, you should make sure that your audience can get your messages clearly. So that's the purpose of giving a presentation, right? Okay. So, and the next one, according to the deliveries. Oh, some of you have natural gestures, which is good. But some of you may feel very nervous, so you keep moving around, moving about, right? So some of you have like meaningless gestures. But you can fix the problem by practicing more, which means you can have rehearsals. Even in front of your classmates or in front of the mirrors, okay? So you can fix the problem in the future, right? As for the PPT, the slide, I noticed that many of you, almost all of you use template. It's very convenient and it's really tempting to use that, which can save us a lot of time. But there are some common problems. For example, this is an English presentation. So as we know, English sentences look like this, right? Like long lines. But many templates have like fixed squares. And squares is not very friendly for English writing. That means you're going to segment one sentence into many chunks, and which is not easy for the readers to read, right? So you can use some elements, but you need to make adjustment or make changes if necessary, right? And the second one is there are a lot of elements on one slide. So some of you forgot to delete the redundant one. For example, I saw Chinese on it. Right? So be careful whenever you use template from the internet, right? And always check your spelling and grammar, right? Okay. But overall, I think you did a great job. And what interests me the most is some of you relate yourself to the story. And your personal experience, your personal stories is the key that make you stand out from the crowd. Right? So, once again, good job. Thank you very much. We enjoyed this afternoon a lot.
So thank you all for your presentations. We really enjoy all of your presentations, and it is like we're very honest that the presentations this year are like really impressive. Okay, so yeah, none of you just like forgot the lines on the stage and then like couldn't continue your presentations. Also like I can see that all of you dedicate a lot of like time and effort, and also like try yourself to convey your thoughts and share what you love with the audience. So I believe that you have already all learned from experience, and hopefully if you have a like if you plan to participate in this kind of contest in future, that would be a really good chance for you to not only train your oral speech, but like oral ability, but also like your public speaking skills, like including your like stage manner, and also like see what like others have in their presentations, in their slides, so that you can learn from their skills as well. Okay, all right, but as you know, every contest have some have different results for different people, and well, but like as we said, like all the presentations are quite impressive. Okay, so we're going to we have already chosen 3 people that will get the prize called like 佳作, okay? And we'll have 3 for 优等 and 3 for 特优, like the top 1 prize, okay? So that's like announce the results for those who get like the so-called third prize or 佳作. Okay. All right. So like the prize 好佳作好 goes to number 5 好王佩杰. Okay. And also number 7 张嘉轩. And also number 10 周慧妮. Okay. And so we have 3 people that get like the second prize. So the prize 好优等好 the prize 优等 goes to number 6 陈静伟 and number 8 陈欣宇 and also number 9 林爱. All right. So we know that the first prize goes to number 2 黄云雅 and number 4 叶嘉乐 and number 11 He Chun'an. Okay, so congratulations for all of you. Okay, because yeah, you really spent a lot of time and like gave us a pretty like I think it's like a pretty rewarding afternoon for not all of you but also for like the teachers and I believe like for everyone who would like have the opportunity to listen to your presentations. Okay, so yeah, thank you for your participation, your efforts, and hopefully in the future you can still try to get similar opportunities like this and keep improving yourself, your like all this kind of presentation skills in the future. All right, thank you.